I immediately took from it is democracy is still alive. It is still alive. The British are still alive. They can still say "sod you." You know, this was amazing. It was a middle finger to every single one of just the right kind of people. It was a middle finger to the left, who are still crying over it, still to this day, demanding a second referendum, screaming in the streets for the "let's ignore this referendum." They're still not over it. Bless them. It's wonderful to watch. So it was the left, it was the mainstream media, the BBC. The BBC are still not over it either. They were going on and on for weeks afterwards. No doubt that if the police wanted to get something on some of these grooming gangs, they're so difficult to prosecute, they could. They're perfectly able to go through someone's private life and private history when it suits them, but not when it doesn't. They're perfectly able to apply the law when it suits them, but not when it doesn't. And the line is, are you going along with the multicultural political correctness of the government? If you're not, then you're on the target list for law enforcement. Bristol, where the Muslim population is Somali, the rape gangs are Somali. If you look at Sweden, the massive conviction rate, of 90-odd%, are from Afghanistan, Iraq, Morocco, Libya, Egypt, and this is across the board in Europe. This is Germany as well. They do not share an ethnicity. These men, they share a religion, and it's a religion which teaches utter contempt for women, particularly non-Muslim women, and they grow up immersed in this contempt for women, and then they see British girls wearing British girls' clothes, and they think Trump asking for it, and they think they have every right to rape her.
Yo, big up the man them holding it down. The UK. For defending child rapists, they're all getting convicted. They're all going
to jail. Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. You are now about to witness the Friday Mayhem show on the Manny Sinder channel. If you are easily offended or you do not like listening to hard truths in colourful language, then please get lost. If you stand for free speech and honest communication, please fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the show. Thank you. Music, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, Friday the 4th of January, the first Friday of 2019. I know I promised a epic show such as this before Christmas, but better late than never. We only have our VIP guests for an hour today, so I am not going to waste any time with any banter. So I'm going to introduce a British hero, somebody who stands for freedom, somebody who stands for the people of Britain, and somebody that we all should be familiar with and the politics that she stands for. Anne-Marie Waters, welcome to the Manny Sinder channel.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very happy to be here.
Thank you. Now I'm going to have to ask the most ignorant question of the evening first and foremost, because I want to dispel this myth. So can I ask you, are you a racist and do you have any hatred towards anybody?
No, I am not a racist. My objection is not towards race. And now this should be simple for people to understand, but it isn't. And I've said before, and I don't mean it as an insult or an attempt at humor or anything of the kind, lack of intelligence, in other words, stupidity, is actually a huge factor here. People don't understand the difference between race and religion. I criticize, I condemn, quite forcefully, I admit, quite offensively, I admit, a religion, not a race. I have never said a word against anyone's race, Never, and I never will. I am talking about a religion, and I am talking about a poisonous religion, which is responsible for torture, enslavement, and murder of people all over the world, and is responsible for grotesque cruelties here in our country and across Europe. The religion is driving this. I have said, yes, that I don't want mass immigration from Muslim countries, not because of the race, but because of their religion. I have never said it about Hindus or Sikhs or any other religion, because they don't cause us harm. Islam causes harm. It's written in its scriptures. It's demonstrated in its practice. Islam is a huge problem. And the more Islam in a country, the less free people are. And I don't want that religion in this country. I have said it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'll say it again. It has nothing to do with race, everything to do with religion. So those who think I'm a racist are simply ignorant or too unintelligent to understand the difference between race and religion. And it's as simple as that.
So just to clarify, you're saying that you are not anti-Muslim people, but you are anti-Islamicization of the British countries.
It's very complicated. It's very complicated. If I meet a person, regardless of who that person is, I treat them as a blank sheet. Everyone I meet is an individual, and I don't know them until I get to know them. And I treat everyone the same way. The problem is, I can sit here and say, I don't want Islam in Britain. And I certainly don't want Islam to have influence in Britain. The sad reality is that if we're going to keep Islam out of Britain, it does unfortunately mean keeping Muslims out of Britain. I know how that sounds. I understand how that sounds. Do I want every individual Muslim not allowed into Britain? No. Do I think that British Muslims aren't British? No, they are British. But what I don't want is greater and greater influence of Islam in this society. And unfortunately, that means keeping the Muslim population. I know how it sounds. I know how it sounds. But the fact of the matter is that when you have millions of Muslims, you're getting Islam. You're getting Islam. It's the macro and the micro. The macro is that when you have a mass Muslim population, you've got Islam. The micro is that everyone is an individual. And of course, there are great Muslim individuals. Of course, there are people from Muslim societies who I would welcome here, who I want here. For people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali and many others who fight for freedom, they are more than welcome here. It's not about the individual person. It's about the mass migration. And when you have a mass movement of people from a Muslim country into a Western country, you're bringing Islam. And yes, Islam is the problem. But unfortunately, without Muslims bringing Islam, there would be no Islam. So it's a complicated issue. It doesn't mean I hate every Muslim. It does mean, however, that actually Muslims bring Islam, and Islam is the problem. And I do know how that sounds. I do. But it is reality. It is the reality.
Okay, well, Raj is when Raj comes on, he's going to touch on that. He has a few more extra questions in regards to that. So I just want to shift gears because I know we only have you for an hour today. So one of the reasons why I go to Speaker's Corner is the issue of grooming and the issue of paedophilia in the UK. I know that's an issue throughout the world, especially with paedophilia. But I understand that you are doing a fantastic campaign called the 1400 campaign. Could you perhaps tell everybody what that is about and how, if anybody does want to contribute or donate to that movement, how they can do so?
I don't actually. I support the 1400 campaign, but it's not my campaign. I went to the launch of it. It's not my campaign. I had no involvement in the launch of it or the organisation of it. A friend of mine, Shazia Hobbs, is leading it, but I simply went to the launch. It's not my campaign at all. I strongly support it. What's different about this is, there are helplines for people who have been raped. Of course there are. But during my time of researching the grooming gangs and these specific kinds of rapes, these targeted rapes by Muslim gangs of white girls, one thing I found is that there's nowhere for them to go that isn't politically correct. I remember one girl, for example, she went to the NHS for counselling, and she was given a male Muslim counsellor. And she said, I don't want a male Muslim counsellor. Do you not understand that this brings back all sorts of horrors for me? They called her racist because she didn't want a male Muslim counsellor. Now, when you're a young girl who has been repeatedly gang raped by male Muslims, is it unreasonable to expect that you don't want to share your innermost fears and your innermost feelings with a male Muslim? I would suggest it's perfectly reasonable. And I would also suggest that the wishes of that girl should be respected, but they weren't. She was given a male Muslim as a counsellor. When she objected, she was called a racist and told basically to bugger off, that she would have no counselling. Now, what I think this will offer is a chance for the girls who've been raped by these gangs to actually express themselves, to say how they really feel and not worry about political correctness. And it's absolutely essential. And the people who are opposing this are exactly the same as the Labour councils who turned a blind eye for years and allowed these girls to be raped. You're only allowed to object if you object within parameters set down by left-wing activists. No, girls must be able to speak their minds. These people have been through hell, and now they're being asked to be politically correct while they talk about it. Absolutely not. It's a scandal. These girls must be able to speak freely. And one thing the 1400 campaign, I believe, will allow is for the victims of these crimes or the survivors of these crimes to speak freely and not to be saddled with an NHS provided male Muslim counsellor. It's scandalous. Scandalous.
Anne-Marie, can I ask you, do you regard the grooming as a British Muslim issue? Do you regard it as an Asian issue, or do you regard it as fundamentally a European Muslim issue, i.e. the migrants that are coming from the Muslim community?
Well, I look at the evidence, and evidence reveals it's not ultimate truth, but it points us towards truth. Let's have a look at this. I mean, look, people will always say, well, you know, white men rape too. Why are you so focused on this? Well, there are a couple of issues. Yes, of course, white men rape too. But largely, the police will not turn a blind eye. If there were groups of white men out raping girls, organized gangs raping underage girls, I suspect the police wouldn't turn a blind eye in the way that they do because the men are Muslim. The question you asked, if I consider them Asian, absolutely not. That is a smear. It's a racist smear. And the irony of it all is that the anti-racist left, who constantly label these gangs Asian, are actually engaging in racial smearing. It is not a racial issue, it's a religious issue. These men are overwhelmingly Muslim. They're not they're called Pakistani. We went from Asian men, which is a slur on everyone from Asia. They went from that to Pakistani men. They're not Pakistani either. Being Pakistani does not teach you contempt for women. Being Muslim does. And if we look at, say, Yorkshire and Lancashire, then yes, the majority of them are Pakistani. But when you go down, as I've said before, if you go down to Bristol, where the majority Muslim population is Somali, then the rape gangs are also Somali. And if you go across to Sweden, Germany, France, Austria, other parts of Norway, the rapists are Afghan, Libyan, Egyptian. One thing, they are not the same ethnicity. They're not the same nationality. The one thing they have in common is the religion. Their religion. So wouldn't it be prudent for European leaders to admit that the thing these rape gangs have in common is not race, it's not ethnicity, it's not nationality, it's religion. So why don't we look at the teachings of that religion and see what they say? And I'll tell you what they say. They teach utter contempt for females, and especially free European females. And that is why this is happening. And I can tell you with absolute assurance that if white men, organized gangs of white men, were raping Muslim girls, targeting Muslim girls for rape in this or any other European country, it would be an international scandal. Nobody would say, but what does it matter if white men are raping Muslims? Muslim men rape too. What difference does it make? No one would make that argument. It would be front and center. The racial and religious aspect would be front and center if white men were doing it to Muslims. But because it's Muslims doing it to whites, no one gives a damn.
And I'm sure both of us will be campaigning just as hard if the shoe was on the other foot, that it was the Muslim children.
Of course. I mean, one of the reasons I talk about this is because the mainstream won't. You know, if the Labour Party and the Conservatives were honest about this, I wouldn't have to be. You know, people tell me I'm focusing on one type of rape. I'm focusing on it because it's ignored by the mainstream. There's a reason to focus on it. I remember, I'll give you an example. There's a group that was set up specifically to campaign for victims of sexual abuse by Catholic clergy. Now, nobody, to my knowledge, and I knew the woman who set this group up, but in all their years of campaigning, they were specifically for people who'd been sexually abused by Catholic clergy. That was what they were set up for. At no point, and I knew the woman who ran it, and I asked her this question, at no point did anyone ask them, why are you only focused on Catholic clergy? Why aren't you talking about what Muslims do? But if you focus on the victims of Muslim grooming gangs, you'll immediately be asked, why are you only focusing on Muslims? What about Catholics? What about the rest? It's the level play, the playing field is completely distorted. There is no level playing field whatsoever. It's a racial issue when white people do it, but when it's done to white people, we must ignore the racial aspect.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there. I'm just going to shift gears very quickly before Steve comes in. I know from all the political parties literature that I have read, For Britain mentions the British Constitution the most. I'm very impressed. I love the British Constitution. I love the American Constitution. I even like the Swiss Constitution. I know the value of freedom, the value of law. Even my granddad, who fought for the Indian Army and for the British Army, taught me plenty when it came down to the British Constitution. Before Steve does come in, could you please help us all understand why we need to be aware of the Constitution and how important it is?
I don't think we have enough protection from Parliament. And this is the problem. In British politics, in British history, we have relied upon Parliament essentially as a guardian. I think we need a guardian against Parliament now. I think we have a system where we have transient MPs who come and go, but have it within their power to remove ancient, age-old liberties that the British people have enjoyed. I don't think they should be able to. I think there should be a constitution legally supreme, like in the United States, with which the MPs are held to account. MPs can only legislate in accordance with this overriding constitution. It means that if we had free speech enshrined in that constitution, which of course would be number one, like it is in the US Constitution, then MPs cannot come along and take away our fundamental freedoms. Every piece of legislation they introduce must be compatible with that constitution. I think it's what we need. I think it's what we need to protect our freedoms going forward. And I think it's actually what is keeping the US relatively. The US is in a worse position than it thinks it's in. But relatively, it's a lot safer than we are in terms of its free speech. And that's because of the Constitution. I think we need one.
Sure. Steve, would you like to come in at this point?
Hi there. Hi, Manny. Hi, Anne-Marie.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to ask you some questions about the current sort of political situation across the country. Obviously, you know, we're all well aware that UKIP went through quite a lot of turmoil in 2018 with its leader, Gerard Batten, getting quite a lot of grief, particularly about when he has raised the subject of Islam and also obviously his involvement with Tommy Robinson. And they've had a lot of their sort of leading names actually leave the party and sort of move on. So I wondered what your thoughts or your comments were on what UKIP as a party has been through recently.
I try not to pay a lot of attention to UKIP. I don't. they're not us. I mean, I'm not aspiring to be UKIP. I don't have any desire to be UKIP. What I see is a party of how do I put this? A party that has nothing in common except Brexit. And when when the referendum was run, I mean, yes, it hasn't been implemented yet, but still the public mind switched away from UKIP. And suddenly its job was done in the public mind. So UKIP had to internally find a new identity for itself, and suddenly found it had actually nothing in common. They couldn't agree on anything other than that they wanted to leave the European Union. They're still in that little mess. They've got a large contingent which plays to the, if you like, politically correct voice on this, which is that Islam is peace, and actually it's only a tiny minority of extremists that are the problem. And then you've got another half that doesn't agree with that at all. They're at war with themselves. And I think actually the desperation to get Tommy Robinson on board is indicative of that. I think if any party is depending upon one man to save it, that party is in a desperate situation. It has worked in the short term. It's certainly brought members into UKIP, Tommy Robinson's involvement. But I don't see any long-term future here. And I don't see Tommy Robinson as saving it either. I don't think Tommy Robinson is a man for politics, for party politics. They can go their road. I'm going mine. I think UKIP is old and stale. The country needs something new. And that's what I want to say.
You don't think with Farage's departure and some of the things that Gerard has been talking about, that doesn't sort of lead you to conclude any differently?
Differently from?
To what you've just said about them not standing for anything, them being lost, them being a lost.
Well, no, nobody's behind Gerard. That's the point. I mean, after Gerard, most of the MEPs left because of his position. This is not a united party. Like I said, they've got nothing in common other than Brexit. There's a lot of political correctness in UKIP. There's a lot of fear in UKIP, and I've been at the heart of it. I know what it's like to push for just to be able to tell the truth in UKIP. And by the way, Gerard Batten also used to pull a PC line on Islam. He told me that an anti-Islam leader would be a disaster. He also pulls the line of it's not the people we're against, it's the ideology. It's all nonsense. Batten is, in my view, bringing Tommy Robinson on board for a temporary reprieve for UKIP. It won't work, but I don't care. I frankly don't care. This is not my party. I have a party now. I'm looking at the future of my party, not that one.
So can you tell us a bit about what were your what are your plans for Britain? We don't know where we could have a general election coming up. Everything's up for grabs at the moment. What are your plans for Britain?
To grow. I mean, we can't predict what's going to happen. I'm not saying we're going to form a government next week. This is silly. We have to look at the bigger picture. We're in a position that a new party, not in my lifetime have I seen a new party reach our significance in the space of a year. We have about 100 people ready for the next general election, for parliamentary elections. I think we're doing extraordinarily well. Do I know what's coming? No. Can I predict tomorrow? No. But I do know that I'm going to continue building this party. When the country is ready, I don't think the country is ready quite yet to vote out of the Tory Labour duopoly. But I also think that we're heading in that direction. If you look, the big majorities, for example, that Labour and the Tories have enjoyed are gone. Margaret Thatcher had massive majorities in the 80s. Tony Blair had massive majorities in the 90s. And if you look at the current Tory government, it's essentially a minority government, dependent upon the DUP. And even with that, even with the chaos in the Conservative Party, we've got a really unpopular Prime Minister in Theresa May, and still Jeremy Corbyn is behind her in the polls, and still Labour are behind the Conservatives in the polls. This is unprecedented. Even in normal political cycles, Labour should be way ahead of the Tories by now. But even in the midst of the Tory chaos, Labour is still not catching up with them. That tells me something. something. It tells me that people are growing weary of the Tory Labour duopoly. And I do think in the next decade or so, when the people are ready, they will start voting differently. And what I want for Britain is to be ready to have its structure in place, to have candidates, enough candidates across the country, so that when the country is ready to stop voting for these cowards and vote for someone new, For Britain is ready for them to accept their votes. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while, but it will happen.
100 candidates, that's a good number for such a new party.
Of course it is. It's incredible. Every meeting I go to branch meetings all over the country, and I am not bigging us up. This is not flannel. It's the absolute truth. The branch meetings of For Britain I go to around the country are much bigger than UKIP meetings and than Labour meetings in my career in both parties. People are out there. This party has something special, and it's not about me. It's about the message. It's about the time. Something is going to happen here. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's coming. And I tell you, 10 years is a very short time, but over the next 10 years, things are going to change in this country. And what I want is for Britain to be ready. When the people are ready to change, we will be there to give them that change.
We all know, rightly or wrongly, though, you need financial backing. Are you getting financial backing?
We're funded by our members.
That's not always enough, is it?
No, it's not. But it depends on how many members you've got.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I can be pessimistic if I want to, or I can be optimistic if I want to.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic. Look, last May, a few weeks after we completed our registration, we beat UKIP, we beat the Liberal Democrats, we beat the Greens in local elections. We didn't win them, but we came in ahead of those three parties in various seats. Now, what does that tell you? There wasn't a lot of money pumped into that. We were only just registered. We were so new, we didn't even have our logo on the ballot paper. And we beat the Liberal Democrats. We beat the Greens. We beat UKIP. Weeks only after registering. There's something there. There's something there. Do I know? Do we need money? Of course. Do I know where the next money is coming from? No, I don't. What I do know is that we'll be here and working for it. And we'll take every opportunity. You've got to just persevere and work. Everything doesn't fall into your lap. You persevere and you work for it, and it comes.
Yeah, good stuff. Manny?
True.
Yeah, I think Raj has joined us now. Raj, would you like to unmute yourself and say hello to Anne-Marie?
Oh, hello, Anne-Marie. How you doing?
Hello, Raj. I'm all right. How are you?
I met you at the Day for Freedom photo shoot.
I remember, yeah. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, so yeah, I'm kind of like I used to be a Labour Party member for like I think it was 18 years. I used to canvass. I used to go around people's houses hounding them to vote. I haven't voted for Labour for the last two general elections because obviously they've gone so far to the left that I can't support a party that is pretty much a communist party now.
Yeah.
And their PC kind of nature, anyone that knows me is that I'm very direct, which is why I get a lot of hate and I've been chased out of the park and all that kind of speaker's corner. My thing is I'm trying to kind of find a new party or a new movement that I can kind of support because I'm very political. A lot of people don't realize that I used to really be political. I even met Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and all of these guys. So For Britain, you know, I like bits of For Britain. I can't vote UKIP. I will be straight. I don't like Jared Batten. I met him, and I don't think when I meet someone, I either get a good feeling or I don't. And I didn't get that feeling. So, what is it that you can kind of offer that these other parties like UKIP, Labour, Conservative, and any other movements that you've got that they haven't got that you think's special?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not playing any games. I don't change my tune. And I can tell you that Jared Batten has changed his tune. I was told to stay away from Tommy Robinson by very individuals who are now sucking up to Tommy Robinson. It's okay. If you listen, let me give you an example. Sajid Javid now is talking about Asian, quote unquote, Asian grooming gangs. He's trying to sound radical. He's trying to sound on point. He sees the media and where it's going, and he's trying to sound like that so that he can grapple a bit of votes towards the Tories and reassure the people that actually the Tories get this and they're on their side. The man has no clue, and he'll change his tune tomorrow if it suits him. They always change their tune. I have said the same things for 15 years. I have never changed my tune. I did not come into this because I wanted to be a politician. I don't want to be a politician. In fact, it's a horrible life. I wish I didn't have to live it. But I am doing this for something greater. And everyone in this party left somewhere who wasn't up to scratch principle-wise. Now, it's not easy. It's not easy. And anyone who wants easy can go to Labour or the Conservatives, or anyone who wants assurances can go there. But if you want principle, if you want absolute, steadfast adherence to the principles that we say, if you want someone who means what they say and says what they mean, I think of the political party leaders in this country, I genuinely think I'm the only one with a genuine record of standing my ground, even at my own expense. I was kicked out of seats in UKIP for standing my ground. I still wouldn't back down because I knew what I was saying was true. And even at my own expense, I still kept telling the truth. Some people can call me stupid. I actually think that it's going to pay us massive dividends in the end. So it depends on what you want. It depends. If you want an easy life, go with the Conservatives. If you want truth and principle and people who won't back down, then we're your party.
Well, if anyone knows me, I don't like an easy life. I love the hate. I always say that you're not doing something right if people don't hate you.
But then
I am somebody that has, my relative was groomed, and the Sikhs have been fighting the grooming epidemic from the Asian Muslim community. And I've not changed my tune. People have tried to make me change my rhetoric about that. It is an Asian Muslim problem, and the Sikhs have been fighting this since the 80s. My own relative, I know people that went to prison to protect our girls. But my issue is that I have to admit, after my relative was groomed, I became very hard line in my thought process. And going to Speaker's Corner, I have met some really amazing Muslims who, a lot of them are on this panel, and they are pro-British, and they are pro-British. And how do we attract those individuals from the Muslim community who, because I want a movement myself personally that is pro-UK, in the sense that I'm British Punjabi Sikh, and on top of that, I still criticize the past and the colonialism, but I want to look forwards, and I want to see the prosperity of the UK and for it to be safe. How do we attract the Muslim community who are similar minded, but your rhetoric against Muslims or Islam is a little bit hard. So how do we get those people on board?
We can't. Look, everyone is welcome to join us. But I am not, and I'm going to be very frank with you here, I am not going to make an effort to attract moderate Muslims, because this is where everything goes wrong. This is where UKIP goes wrong. They will stop telling the truth about Islam in order to not offend Muslims. I won't do that. Muslims are welcome to join us. Of course they are. But I will not change my tune, because what I'm saying is the truth. I will not pretend that Islam is not a misogynistic religion, if we're talking about rape gangs. It is. It is. It treats women with utter contempt. I am not going to pretend otherwise in order to attract Muslims. Muslims are welcome, but I will not change my tune. Sorry. That's how it is.
All right. I mean, I appreciate your honesty. Most politicians would probably lie or try and wiggle their way out. So there is one. Yeah, there is. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I can respect. At least I know where I stand in that particular areas. I don't know if Manny or you lot want to kind of ask Anne-Marie any questions, because I don't want to take over. They all said take over the show, so let them.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go into economics a little bit. I am a trader. I do a lot of investing as well. So if we could get you elected as the Prime Minister, Anne-Marie, would you consider backing the British pound with some kind of commodity such as gold or silver? I mean, do you think that would help get this economy as the #1 economy as it used to be before the war?
I have no alignment economically. I know that capitalism and the free market works. I know that it creates wealth. I also know that left unhindered, it can end up with companies who are too powerful. And I know that when you start to talk about such things, people immediately start to panic and start shouting socialists. It's absurd. My view is open free markets, but there is an issue with companies and multinational companies having too much power. In answer to your question, I will do anything that creates wealth for Britain, but without eroding our freedoms. Now, there has to be a middle ground in that. And you may wonder what I'm talking about, but let me give you an example. Large multinational companies went to the British government and said that they didn't like the Brexit referendum result because they wanted mass immigration for Labour purposes. And the government, the Conservative business secretary at the time, actually said, we must listen to these companies. They don't want an end to mass immigration. Therefore, we must reconsider the Brexit result. Now, when a private multinational company has such power within the government that it is actually being heard when it wants to overturn a referendum result, you have a problem here. You also have a problem with companies like Facebook and Twitter, who are private companies, but who are regulating opinion in public. They are regulating our ability to disseminate public opinion on, for example, politics. They will ban people with conservative values, for example, while left-wing values, no matter how disgusting they may be, are elevated morally by these companies. There is a problem here. There is a problem. So my overriding philosophy is free market, yes, but we cannot allow it that companies, multinational or otherwise, have such power that they hold governments under their iron fist. There is a problem here. Now, people will call me socialist. It's absurd. It's like the left wing calling you racist when you criticize Islam. It's absurd. There's an issue here and we must discuss it. But of course, I am for whatever it is, creates the most wealth, creates the most a higher standard of living, but it's not unlimited. Companies must be reined in. I know that doesn't exactly answer your question, but it gives you an overview of my economic philosophy.
On the topic of finance, I heard from the grapevine that the powers to be had terminated all your bank accounts. Is that a true story, or is that?
No, they didn't terminate our bank accounts. We weren't able to get bank accounts. No mainstream high street bank will give us an account, so we're reliant on online accounts.
Oh, I see. So this is for Britain and its activities. So they didn't allow you to have a bank account to operate as you would need to.
None of the mainstream banks would entertain us at all.
And can I ask, did they give you any reason for that?
No, but one of them did. Metro Bank gave us a reason. Most of them will just say it's we don't allow political parties or whatever. Metro Bank did give us a specific reason. They said that we were at odds with their philosophy on equality, and we excluded people from British society. Therefore, we could not be entertained. We did ask them what parts of British society we excluded, but they didn't have an answer to that.
I mean, that's shocking. I mean, the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, the Lib Dems, they must all have bank accounts, and I'd always imagined they were with the main banks.
Yeah, of course. But we're labelled far right. We're labelled Nazis. We're labelled, you name it. They don't want to be associated with us. You know what? I don't think the banks themselves would care. It's the bullying from the left that causes the problem. Do you know what happens if a company just carries out its ordinary business and gives its services to paying customers? Lefties will phone up and bully them and intimidate them and say, we're going to advertise that you're Nazis and racists, and they'll think it's not worth the hassle. Let's just cancel this contract. It's not worth the hassle. It's the left-wing bullies who are the real problem. The companies would do business, but it's the bullying they face from the left that really stops them from doing it.
And obviously that's what happened during the Lewisham by-election when the hustings were just completely destroyed.
This is shocking. How can it be? I mean, this is, if you read this in a history book, it would be a shocking event. A parliamentary candidate cannot attend a hustings because for her own safety. I mean, what is going on here? This should be an international story. And I can tell you, if it was Diane Abbott or anyone from Labour who wasn't able to attend a hustings because of right-wing protesters, we would still be talking about it. But
so we can predict that in any future by-elections or general elections, that same nonsense will happen again. What can we do to
well, hopefully not, because what we did, this was unprecedented. So we took out a formal complaint against the Metropolitan Police, and they have admitted fault. They told us that, yes, you're right. We should have. It was my rights that they were duty bound to protect. They should have dispersed the troublemakers instead of conceding to the troublemakers, and they should have made my right to speak a priority. Now, they've conceded that. We have it in writing from them. And we're going to pursue this with other police forces around the country. You've got to, we take every legal avenue we can. Every time anyone defames us or smears us in the press, we go after them. It's very difficult. And, like anything, we're going to have to wait, I think, for that perfect case, that perfect opportunity to come when we can actually successfully sue someone for calling us names, for impeding our rights in this way. And we will get there. But we did get an admission from the Metropolitan Police that they were in the wrong. My rights were supreme. They should have protected my rights. And we will use that. We have it in writing.
Yeah.
We will go, if I go to Manchester, I will give that to the GMP and say, you must protect my right to speak. You must. It's your legal duty. Because, we've got to fight. We've got to fight back with the law. And we're doing it at every opportunity. It's where we're going to win.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to discuss paedophilia very quickly, Anne-Marie. Now, when Theresa May, our lovely current Prime Minister, who works for the British people as hard as well, she doesn't, does she? Let's face it. Now, when she was Home Secretary, I believe she was the one responsible for losing the list of the 100 MPs involved in the child abuse scandal. Now she's Prime Minister, we've seen an increase of sex education to children going younger and younger and younger. Then we've got the likes of the Americans, going to something called a sex island where underage children are being sexually abused. Now, I don't want to sound too conspiratorial, but the question to you, do paedophiles run the world, and is the establishment linked to an underground paedophile network?
I don't know about linked to an underground paedophile network. It's a question, that specific question is one I can't answer. But what I will say is that there is certainly a normalization of paedophilia going on. We have you can even see it in the grooming gangs, where the police said these 12-year-old girls were making informed choices. This is a sort of adultization of children. There is certainly a paedophilia normalization. I don't know, campaign is the wrong word, but certainly going on. You can even, you saw in Germany recently the criminalization of child marriage was ruled unconstitutional. Now, what does that tell you? What does that tell you about the direction that Germany is going in? I think there are various, as with everything in life, there are various different components here. One of them is certainly immigration. And I don't mean to harp on and make it sound like this is the cause of everything, but it certainly is an aspect to it. An aspect is immigration from societies where marrying children is the norm. And that has allowed the paedophile or the child sexualization element of our society to become confident and start speaking out for underage sex. There's also with the LGBTQ plus. I don't even know what it means anymore. The normalization of paedophilia is happening through that avenue as well. And it's bizarre to me because I remember, there was a time when the LGB society was, spent its time fending off these smears of paedophilia, and now paedophilia has attached itself and sort of making itself like a gay rights issue. So there's loads of different aspects to this, but while I can't pin it down to one thing, and I don't have any evidence of a conspiracy, I do see with my own eyes a definite change in society towards the normalization of sex with children. And I think it's probably should be number one on our list of things to fight against.
Absolutely, I agree. Raj, I will the floor before she leaves on the hour. Did you want to come in and ask any final questions before she leaves?
Yeah, I was on a show yesterday. It lasted quite a long time. I think around nearly 13 hours, and there was a lot of talk about Brexit and immigration and why Brexit is important for the UK. And the topic kept on going back to immigration, even though I kept on saying the reason I voted for Brexit was about sovereignty more than immigration. But immigration is a very important aspect to it, because I believe that, having checks and controls on who comes into the country is going to be very important for the future. We can't just have everyone coming in unvetted. But I was obviously chastised for that, because I'm from an immigrant background and called a coon and an Uncle Tom and a traitor. How would you kind of explain the importance of controlling our borders and having our own sovereignty to somebody that thinks it's about race rather than about what's good for the UK?
Well, you know what? In most occasions, with most people, there's very little reasoning with them, to be honest with you. But just to put the basic arguments and the common sense arguments forward, look, we only have a nation is, whether the left likes it or not, it is a defined piece of land with a defined border, a defined jurisdiction, a defined budget, a defined and limited amount of resources. So if you casually open the doors to the whole world to come into that country, it is profoundly irresponsible. It defies all common sense. You can't, a small number of taxpayers cannot fund the entire world. So if you were to look at it this way, the British taxpayer, 60 odd million people is the population, not all taxpayers, obviously. But if you take the percentage of that are taxpayers, say 20, 30 million people paying tax, how can the taxes of 20 odd million people pay to feed, clothe, for example, an unlimited number from Africa? You can't. Mathematics just simply doesn't add up. You only have a certain amount of money. If you are going to allow unlimited immigration, you're going to erode, you're going to chip away at that amount of money until the money runs out, and then we're all living in the same situation of poverty that someone was trying to flee. We saw Diane Abbott this week calling fleeing poverty refugee. It's not. Fleeing poverty does not make you a refugee. If that was the case, half the world, 2/3 of the world perhaps, would be refugees. Europe can't take the whole world. We can't. It's simple mathematics. It's simple numbers. We don't have the space. We don't have the money. We don't have the resources. And you're still asking for a limited number of taxpayers to fund the lifestyle of an unlimited number of people. Mathematically, it doesn't work. It can't work. And the reason you don't get this message through is to the left wing, or certainly to the hard left wing, it's because they don't listen to reason. You could start talking about numbers, about finance, about basic resources, even about space, even about the actual physical space we have to stand on. They won't hear it. All they'll hear is hate and racism. This is what they're steeped in. We physically cannot maintain an unlimited number of people on this island. We financially cannot maintain an unlimited number of people on this island. And if we are to continue to take people from all over the world, it is reducing wages for working class people. It is putting back conditions for working class people. So my question to such a person, to a lefty, for want of a better, I know I'm being quite flippant there, is to say, well, what do you think should happen? What if we overflow a working class area with available labor? This is basic economics. Oversupply of labor equals reduction in pay. They are pushing back the living standards and pay of British people. And they know they're doing that. The fact of the matter is they don't care, because they think for some reason British people deserve it, and that everyone from outside Britain, particularly non-white people, are all victims who all deserve to come here and to gain their payback for colonialism. I'm not being facetious. This is how they think. It really is.
Yeah, I do agree with you, because I've had conversations, and it normally goes back to the UK colonized the world, and so they have a right to be here. And I say to them, I understand that the UK's colonial past needs to be, there's a lot of bad in there, a lot needs to be condemned, but we still got to live on this island and make it work. And burning your bridges just to get back at the British is not going to affect you in your lifetime. It will affect your kids, your grandkids, and future generations. But unfortunately, this is going to be a sly dig at these people. They're only thinking very selfishly within their own lifetime, and I don't think they care about the future generations.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you one question, because I need to ask you a little bit of a question, because a lot of people are asking this. Some people are saying that you're originally from Dublin in Ireland, and they're saying that, well, they, and obviously they're trying to be kind of play their kind of like, just trying to show you that maybe you got an Irish background and what are you doing here, and maybe if you put your policies in place, then you might not have got in. So what is your kind of what would you say to those people?
Well, like I say, stupidity is what will kill us in the end. This is stupid. This is stupid. We are talking about, I'm objecting to mass migration from the Middle East and Africa primarily, because they have religions and cultures which have nothing in common with European religions and cultures. So we're not talking about Europeans living in each other's countries. I have been clear about that from the start. But secondly, and this is more important, and this is where the stupidity comes in, there has for 1,000 years been an open border and a right of settlement between Ireland and Britain. There is no such thing legally as an Irish immigrant in Britain. Look it up. They have no idea about this. I remember seeing someone recently on Twitter, some lefty numbskull as well, and he wrote the exact words, "She is literally here on her EU passport." And I thought to myself, I wonder if anyone will answer correctly with some legal knowledge and some political knowledge. And to my surprise, my pleasant surprise, they did. Several people wrote back saying, "You idiot. The open border between Ireland and Britain, the act of settlement between Ireland and Britain, the right of settlement between Ireland and Britain is hundreds and hundreds of years old and has nothing whatsoever to do with the European Union." That's the first thing. Second thing, Ireland has a long history, cultural. We share a culture with England, Scotland, and Wales. I am not talking about people moving from one country to another. I have no objection to people moving from Spain to Britain or from Manchester to Paris. This is not what we are talking about. We are talking about mass migration, a population shift, and masses of people in a short space of time from a region of the world to another region of the world, which has nothing in common. We have nothing in common with the mass populations that are coming here. I'm speaking overwhelmingly about Muslims, though not exclusively. There are Christian groups in Africa, for example, which would still have issues with modern Britain. We are not talking about this. It's stupid. I am talking about mass population shift from, for example, Somalia into London, and the absolute conflict that brings. The idea that is comparable from an Irish person living in Britain, which has happened for 1,000 years, is absurd and pathetic and demonstrates the stupidity of the arguer. Simple.
And now we're running out of time now, so I want everybody to know that if they want to sign up or they want to join For Britain, the website is forbritain.uk. So that's www.forbritain.uk, and you are able to have a look at all the information that you will need about For Britain, what they stand for, their policies, and yeah, all the information that you would require. Now, I know you have to go now, Anne-Marie, so please take the next few moments to perhaps leave us with a message about what your whatever the message that you want to give the people.
Well, thanks very much, Manny, for a start. Look, my message is very simple. I want to preserve our freedoms. I want to preserve our right to speak. But I also want to preserve the Britain that I know, the Britain that I love and that I know. And I think I have every right to ask for that. This doesn't mean that I want everyone excluded from Britain. It's nothing of the kind. I don't care, for example, what colour a person's skin is. No decent person does. But you have to accept the reality that if you invite masses of people from a culture which doesn't believe in freedom, you are going to have problems in that free society. All I am saying is I want to preserve the freedoms we have. I want to honor the generations that went before. It's nothing to do with hate. It's all about love, actually. It's about love of us. It's about love of who we are and love of what we represent. I really, really wish, I really, really want people to stop listening to the mainstream media, to go listen to me, listen to us, go to our website, read our manifesto, see what we're actually about. And if at that time you decide you don't like us, that's fine. But don't make up your mind based on biased nonsense from the media or some rubbish from Hope Not Hate. Listen to us. If you, as I said, if you don't like it after that, that's fine. But make up your mind based on what we say and not what is said about us. And I would implore people to open your minds, because Labour and the Tories are not going to rescue. They're not going to solve these problems. We have huge problems here. And Labour and the Tories caused it. They're not going to solve it. So think differently. Look elsewhere. Listen to what we say. Forbritain.uk, listen to us, not to Hope Not Hate. Simple.
Very passionate, very powerful. Thank you very much. I'm looking to organise a charity event for the victims of grooming and what have you. Could I rely on you to perhaps come back one day and help us with that, even if it is just for a few moments to give us a speech and your thoughts?
I will be there. I will be there. Whatever you want, Manny, give me a shout.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Every way I can.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us. That was really good to have you on.
Great. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Great to speak to you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Raj, that was Anne-Marie Waters for Britain. I'm still a fan, I'm afraid. I liked what she had to say. What did you guys think?
No, I completely agree. You know, I don't think I've ever heard her say anything that I disagree with. I still think For Britain's got one hell of a cliff to climb in front of itself. I'm not sure. You know, it's why I particularly asked about the whole UKIP and the UKIP relationship, because, you know, like it or lump it, UKIP are a long way further down the road. They do still have a big brand. They do still have a much bigger following than For Britain. To me, they are splitting the vote. And I think I'm not the only one to sometimes be a bit frustrated that they can't get together, work together, you know, either informally, if not formally, with a complete and proper merging. Because I think, you know, if they put candidates up against each other at any future election, I think that will be crazy, because it will be splitting the vote, and basically, you know, giving the seats to one of the main two parties. So yeah, I'm a bit frustrated and confused on that subject. But yeah, as an individual, as a person, I'm not sure if I've ever heard her say anything that I don't full-heartedly agree with.
Raj, are you going to join up? Are we going to see you as the For Britain Mayor of London soon?
All right. I mean, look, I like her. I think she's refreshing in the sense that she says it how it is. But I still find, like, look, when I asked her about, Muslims who are pro UK, and they, what would you say to them? I found that art, although I appreciate her honesty, brutal honesty, um, it just seems too divisive. Uh, I want a movement that is inclusive to people that I know who are pro-British but Muslim, and I don't want that. So, am I saying I'll never ever go towards for Britain? No. I think if it kind of um, goes more a few, I mean, that's the only sticking point. Her stance against Islam is too hard line for me. Yeah, it's just way too hard line. I think. Um, I want people to join that, I know on the panel that are on there now, and to feel comfortable joining that they're for the UK, they still want to be Muslim, and if they can do that, then yeah, I can do that. But obviously, I agree with a lot of it, a lot of what she said. Immigration must be controlled. This is just silliness to call people racist. I don't say she's racist. Does she not like Islam? Yeah, damn right she doesn't. But one thing we didn't speak about when we was on there is that she is from the gay community, so it's like a chicken, like in KFC. The chicken's gonna hate KFC, isn't it? Because it's calling for the death
But
of it.
but you can be gay and think the far left have gone too far. You can be trans and think the world has gone too far. I don't think that. I think just because you're part of one of those communities means that you necessarily support the nonsense that is now starting to happen in that arena.
No,
I
but what I was trying to say is it's a bit like Sophia Lewis. Big up Sophia Lewis. I mean, a lot of people are confused as to why she might have an issue with Islam, but transsexuals are people that are, could be put to death under Sharia if they were that way. So same with Anne Marie, she's gonna have quite a big issue with it, and I can understand where she's coming from. But I still find it difficult to stomach.
So how would
How.
you identify or define that you think she's too hardcore?
I think the only thing I found was hardcore. The rest of it, I was agreeing with. I was all right, cool, cool, cool. It's when I asked about, I said, look, there's Muslims that I know who are pro UK, pro British, and uh, they want what's best for the UK, and if that means it's democracy and closing the borders and stuff like that, or just controlling the borders. I didn't say exactly that. And her answer, I've got to listen back to it before I say anything I regret. But it sounded to me like there's not really any place for them within that party.
So
And I may
basically,
be wrong. I may be wrong. I need to re-listen, and I might come back and listen to that bit, and then come back
it
to that.
sounds like you have a similar stance to me, Raj. That when we look at history, when we look at the likes of the German Nazi Party, because they didn't differentiate between the moderates and the not so moderates, they just went against the Jews, and that then snowballed into something horrific, right? So it either starts off as we just tackle the extremists, no matter who they are, what race or what religion, or we take something that's not going to be right. So that's what you're really kind of saying. Am I right?
I wouldn't have phrased it like that. I think that's a little bit controversial because I don't know what you mean about. Let's not talk about it, but you may want to.
No,
You
no, no.
might want to
Let me
clarify.
clarify then. Let me clarify that
Yeah,
I'm agreeing with you that we have to protect all moderates, right?
yeah.
Because what her main issue is obviously, if you look at her literature, that she's very protective against the most extreme groups. So not every if we take the Muslim for example, not every Muslim is what we would call an extreme. There's some fantastic Muslim people out there, so we want to protect them just like we are protecting any other individual. So I'm asking you, so I'm trying to get you to agree with that statement, because we don't want to go down the road, because everybody, whenever there's a movement like this that comes forward, they always apply the whole Nazi scenario, right? They start to say that, look what happened in Germany, and we don't want a repeat of that. But unfortunately, when we take that leftist stance, we kind of overshoot, and we start letting in, like it has been, having more immigrants than the economy needs.
I get what you're saying, but I think I understand what you're saying, but remember, there's a lot of thick people out there, and a lot of them are in your chat. No offense to them, but they're going to misconstrue what you're saying. So maybe we'll go from them. I understand what you're saying. Maybe not the best example, but the thing is, like, I'm kind of look. I'm in a difficult position because I don't know. I'm not as hardline as I was. Say, like, I mean, if she was on there a year ago or 14 months when I came to Speaker's Corner, I probably would have had no issue at all with what was said, and I would be totally on board. I'd probably be a full-on For Britain member, going to houses and stuff like that. But I just found some of the stuff a little bit hard to swallow, especially about the bit where she was. I don't think she thinks there's a place for even moderate Muslims in her party, and that confuses me, because what about if they can't be in your party, then how can they be in the UK? You understand? It can snowball pretty quick. Like, if you can't join the party, if they won't welcome you in their party because you're a moderate Muslim, how are they gonna then see them as part of the UK and people that they can work with? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
It will alienate those people so much that they will have hatred for this party, because they cannot join without feeling like they're not welcome, that they're not British. Because it's For Britain, remember? If you're saying For Britain, that includes Muslims. They have to be involved in some way. I mean, you could say that the Muslims that will get involved aren't really Muslims. They might be chocolate Muslims, as they say, or cultural Muslim, but that's not the point. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I'm just trying to be a devil's advocate.
No, it's a fair point. What are your thoughts on that, Steve?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's all a relevant point. I mean, I think, and she does say this, and other people say this as well. The issue is a clash of very distinct and different cultures. That's the issue. Now, I'm not sure, if I was in her shoes, whether I would even be talking about immigration. Because she does talk about immigration. Sometimes when she's talking about immigration, she caveats it with Muslim immigration or immigration from Muslim countries. That's the issue, because that's what's bringing the problem. That's what's bringing the clash of very polar opposite cultures. That's where the problems arise. Have we had cultural problems with masses and masses of Polish people coming here? No. Or other Eastern Europeans coming here? No. Or from many other countries and cultures around the world? To me, I personally have no issue with that. But I think I'm not sort of left really understanding, does she have a problem with immigration full stop, or is it only immigration from these highly Islamic cultures? Because that's where my concern exists, and that's where I think the problems arise from, not that we have lots of Polish people coming here. Now, you can argue that that does cause some issues and impacts on pay, etc., and employment and school places in schools and waiting lists in hospitals, etc. Obviously, there are, it doesn't go without any implications. But to me, that is very, very low down my priority list than people coming from very distant cultures who hate to the core so many important things to our culture and so many important things to our moral compasses in terms of women's rights, gay rights, etc., etc. That's, to me, is the most biggest issue and cause for concern. And I don't know, I suppose I don't know whether her concern is just broadly on immigration, or whether it is concentrated on Islamic immigration, or whether she's just trying to cover all bases to get votes, to get that appeal. But obviously, I think when you try to cover all bases in terms of people saying they have problems with immigration across the board, to me, that's not right, or it's not of significant concern. But to me, that's more likely going to attract claims of you're racist, you're xenophobic, than if you're just calling out the one extreme culture, as I said.
I mean, I love the fact how she's very pro constitution. I love the fact how it's very completely for the benefit for Britain and the British people. I love the fact how she literally said that she would do and investigate absolutely anything should she become prime minister to help the country. I mean, you don't really get those type of promises, and I certainly don't ever feel that anybody that does make those type of political promises that they're going to deliver them. I do feel that she is speaking from the heart, but again, I'm going to this is only happens a few times a year, but I'm going to agree with Raj that if the party's policies were a little bit more inclusive of the Muslim community, then it would be a win-win situation, right? I mean, we could really put some money on her, doing really well in the next election. So perhaps the likes of we could join the party and help make it more moderate, rather than just saying that it may not work, because this is all our country, right? We all have to improve it together.
I mean, obviously, it's still early days in For Britain, the party's history. But, currently, I'm sure none of us could name anyone else in the party. There are no other sort of leading lights or names or
Raj
characters.
Raj been swapping emails at the Tommy Robinson match.
So Raj could be the next one, the next leading light.
Of who? No, I'm not the leading light. I think I'm a bridge that I could facilitate, because I do feel like I'm trapped between a rock and a hard place. And I think people like Steve is probably someone that's someone that could. Look, I said this to Steve on the weekend, and it's going to sound quite ludicrous, but everything starts from nothing. Yeah, you gotta start somewhere, and I think a new movement, starting at grassroots, trying to attract a real kind of let's just say pro UK. Doesn't matter what race or religion you are, that's what will bind us, is a better movement, which can maybe influence a party like For Britain if it becomes big enough. Do you understand? Because then they would have to listen to, if there's a big enough voter block of people who are supporting that particular movement, they would have to start softening their stance, because the moderate Muslim, you can't call a party For Britain but leave out community. It doesn't make sense. Then you're saying that that community is not for Britain. Do you understand how divisive that will be? And that's my main issue. And that's not something that cannot change, though. This is the thing about For Britain. It's something that is not stuck in stone. Maybe they could change their stance on that, and then then she would have my vote, basically. She would have my support. But I can't at the moment, though.
Yeah, because I agree, and I know we've spoken about this, but as we always point out, our group and those of us that hang out together at Speaker's Corner are the most incredibly diverse group you can imagine.
Yeah,
I think any political movement that's going to have any success has to have that equal diversity. Whether it's gay, whether it's trans, whether it's different races, ethnic races. It has to be proud and celebrate that diversity. And I know that sounds a bit corny, and I'm just like churning out the normal diversity and inclusion nonsense lines, but it is fact of Britain. Britain is one of the most diverse countries in the countries in the world, and in my view, that is one of the things that a very good, strong thing that makes the country strong and has made us successful. And we shouldn't be embarrassed or timid to celebrate that. And I don't think we can be conservative, we can be social democrat, however we define ourselves politically. We should still be able to acknowledge and celebrate that diversity, and it's a core aspect of us. And if one of the core aspects of our cause of our being is anti-radical Islam, then it's even more important that we really push forward and drive the importance of our own diversity in that voice and in that message. Because, you know, if we were only people that look like me, you know, we are not going to get anywhere, and quite rightly so. But when it's a diverse, collected voice saying, you know, this racial-based sex grooming is wrong and it has to stop. This pandering to people from different cultures who don't respect our laws and our cultures and our ways, you know, we have to put that voice together forward. And yeah, is For Britain currently doing that? Again, I know there are non-white members of Britain First. They're certainly not a purely white-faced organisation, but I think, you know, that's something that should be top of the.
No, I met a Hindu guy there, and he was the one that facilitated this to a certain. Well, he wants to come on as well, wants to speak. So it's not exclusively. I don't believe she's racist. I think she might be tribalistic. I think that's different, and I think people wanting to preserve their culture.
She's patriotic. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I don't have an issue with patriotism. I don't have an issue with tribalism. I don't have an issue with people wanting to keep their culture to a certain degree. Like, it doesn't really make a difference to me. I'm going to say something a bit offensive, so obviously I want people to see. My problem is this: a lot of Muslims want to kind of influence the culture of the UK. I don't mind if it was for the better, but when it's for the worse, it's a problem. Like, kind of influencing someone's culture for the better is a good thing. Yeah, you can add on to it and you can improve it. But, you know, certain things about Islam, you know, this kind of backward nature about free speech and stuff. It's like going from a Ferrari to a skateboard. It's like, why would you go that far down? And this is my biggest issue. It's like, you know, they're propagating an ideology which is in the 7th century and doesn't belong in the 21st century UK. And if they could keep that within their own homes and say, all right, I'm a Muslim and I want to just kind of live my life and I don't want to affect UK politics or the law, cool, we can live with that. Yeah. But when it gets to the point where they're trying to propagate and say we want to overthrow the UK and we want to blah, 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 yeah, it becomes a massive issue. Yeah.
So what are we saying here, gents? Are we stating that if For Britain becomes openly, vocally more inclusive, that we could be onto a potential winner here? Is that our conclusion?
It would help. It would help them. I'm not committing to say my support is with them.
So the thing is, the name says it all.
There's nothing wrong with the name.
No. But there's nothing wrong with the name. But what she has is a name that doesn't really mean what it means. You're saying For Britain, and if you say For Britain, then if somebody is a Muslim who says I'm for Britain, I agree with X, Y, Z, but I want to practice my faith in my own privacy, then they should be welcomed with open arms.
No, she already answers that. She's pro-constitution, and the constitution allows anybody to practice any faith they want. So that's already been answered.
I don't look. When I said, what about moderate Muslims? Have they got a place in your party? I'm gonna have to listen back because I don't want to say something. I maybe heard something different, but it felt to me that her answer was like, no, there's not. I mean, I may be right. I don't know if that's the truth. If people can say in there, can remind me what exactly she said on there.
Yeah,
JK and Eunice here are two people I'd like to maybe get on the panel later, because both of them are pretty much the people I'm talking about, including because they're Muslim and they are Muslim, but they're still pro-UK as well, and they want the best for the future for their kids and their grandkids. But I don't think she would welcome them into that movement, which is a big problem for me. I want these people. These are the people that are going to be more important than even us. We can't change the people's mindset within the Muslim community by telling them off. It's going to be from people in the community making the changes themselves for the next generation, and we can't do that if we alienate them and say, look, even the most moderate Muslims aren't welcome.
Fair point. Well said. Well put. Steve, any closing thoughts?
I'm. Well, I was going to say I'm confused. Confused isn't the right word. I have a quandary of what to do in terms of my support. UKIP, for Britain, or something else, and I don't have an answer to that for myself, let alone anyone else.
All right, so let me give an answer. I don't want to take control. I think
You are, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I spoke to Steve. I think we've got a really good, diverse group of people from Speaker's Corner who are brave enough to speak up, which is very important, and say what we mean. And we should start some form of movement from the grassroots. It could only be 10 people. Within 10 years, it might go to 10,000 or 100,000. We don't know. And to start a movement which is about Britain, the UK, and being pro-UK unreservedly, and not being ashamed of that, but still being able to condemn the past as somebody's being colonized, but still want the best for the UK, and that means restricting immigration or doing whatever, cutting our ties from Europe, and it should have like a figurehead like Steve. I think Steve's got a lot of traction and people respect him. But there's other people like Manny, myself, and other people that are from. Obviously, they're going to say tokens, but there's nothing wrong with having tokens sometimes.
You're not tokens when you're part of the core.
Yeah, no, but even tokenism, yeah, is not always a bad thing. Like having somebody who's a dwarf in the lineup, having somebody who's a transsexual, having somebody who's whatever. Do you understand? So just to represent each part of the community, there's not a problem with that if they, as long as they truly have a say in what's going on. So I mean, I personally think it's time for. I think I'll be honest. I think Steve, you're too big for Speaker's Corner. Personally, I personally
Not too fat, you mean?
well, you're getting thinner, but I personally feel like I think we need to do something, even at least try. Do you understand? There's no point saying that we can't do nothing. We can't do nothing. We can't do nothing. Like online wipe is obviously taking a swipe at me, the little prick. Says, is Rod seriously considering working in politics? Now listen here, before everyone starts wetting their panties, I've been in politics for 20 years straight. From the age of around 16, I joined the Labour Party. I was canvassing. I used to go on knocking on people's doors in the freaking 8 in the morning until like 8 in the evening. I've met Tony Blair, Gordon Brown. I was on the stage with them at the Royal Vic. I've been highly political. I just haven't been for the last 8 years because I'm fed up of the political parties because I can't vote for any of them. So I'm just bored of them. So, I mean, what do you think about that, you guys? Like starting a movement, not a political party, a movement that can then maybe influence a party like For Britain if we have enough numbers. Do you understand? So if we had, I don't know, at one point, 8,000 members, people that have joined that particular, movement, you could influence a party like For Britain if you said, look, we'll support you. Do you understand? And maybe make them change their stance on certain issues. Well, what do you think about that?
I mean, where Britain is now, I mean, people that are interested in politics and current affairs, it's an amazing time at the moment. Obviously, it's very uncertain times, but from a political perspective, it's incredibly fascinating times. We've got a Conservative Party, they might be about to pull off Brexit. We might all be pleasantly surprised, or they might be about to completely screw it up and do us over. We've got a Labour Party that has lurched far to the left and is led by a crazy old fool who spent his entire career supporting radical terrorists around the world. We've got a Lib Dem party that's completely collapsed after being in a coalition, and we've got a country that's divided, not just on Brexit, but on many things. So that's all sort of useful stuff to support new voices coming forward and even new groupings and what have you coming to the fore. But our political system does not assist that because it's first past the post. It's very difficult to break out from the old two-party system. But those two parties are not going anywhere, and they're getting appalling. They're getting low levels of support. The Labour Party should absolutely be stealing it in this current situation. But I think they're still behind the Conservatives in the polls. So it's a crazy situation. But unfortunately, I think I asked Anne-Marie about financial backing, because one way of getting political movement is to get big financial backing to the cause. I think that the other way that you can do it is through the digital way, through social media. And it's the new parties across Europe that have sort of come from nowhere and inevitably started it through very, very good digital, very good social media. We all know you can get thousands of subscribers and what have you overnight through good social media use. So I think that's and I suppose that's what we're getting via Speaker's Corner and voices at Speaker's Corner. I'm sure if you put all of the characters and YouTube channels together from Speaker's Corner, they're collectively probably getting millions of views on YouTube channels and on people looking at tweets, etc. So I think we shouldn't knock it. There is some potential, but we'll have to see how we do.
Got one of the biggest videos from YouTube with like 4 million plus views. So I think for us as a group at Speaker's Corner, the Misfit Crew, is actually like the X-Men. We actually are the most powerful crew at the thingy. So I'm firing shots at the rest of them, the rest of the crews down there. And the reason why we're the strongest is just because of the diversity within the group. And that's also could be, if you can expand that microcosm of what we see at like I see McDonald's, when we go McDonald's, as what I would like to see when I look out into a crowd, when you got a movement, like everybody's in there, from every race, from every religion. And could you imagine that I don't know, times by 1,000, and you're looking at that's the kind of movement, if you're going to call yourself For Britain, should be looking to attract. And so I think we've got the basics for being able to include the diverse, because I think whatever my views are on certain issues, like I may not agree with certain things, I will never ever treat you any differently or be rude or belittling to you if you have that belief. And so if we can kind of get that kind of ethos and expand it into a movement, I mean, I think that would be amazing. I mean, I don't know what you think, Manny.
Well, there's certainly potential. Yes, it's a very good idea. If you're the one that thought of it, it's a very good idea. But whether or not there will be enough traction. I mean, it needs investment, it needs time, and it needs a hell of a lot of organisation. Whereas I would be more in favour of joining an already established movement and perhaps influencing it in a more positive way. Because even from today's conversation and today's interview with Anne-Marie, it seems that there's only a small a couple of issues that needs to be changed with For Britain and
but this is what I'm saying to you, that you if I just say to her, I don't like this about your particular movement, just that one aspect, it doesn't have no traction. But if we have a movement that is like, all right, she looks like, all right, so this is a movement, you got a name, you've got a head, you've got a core group, you can have more influence on a particular political party. Yeah. So I just think that we got to think a little bit bigger than.
But we need the likes of Steve. We need the likes of Steve at the forefront with us, no?
Yeah, obviously, because we need our token white man at the front.
But I think
but the thing is, I think we might get online wipe here as our skinny, dishevelled white man who looks like a tramp.
Let's keep on track. Let's keep on track. I was
going to say, I think I agree with Manny that it feels more desirable to me to join something in existence and to help mold and evolve and develop it. And again, when I asked my first question, I think, to Anne Marie about her thoughts on UKIP, and she she really sort of disregarded them and said they were one trick pony just about Brexit, and they're a lost cause. Now having been to the UKIP conference last autumn, they are not a one trick pony. Now there might be a PR communication issue, but they are not a one trick pony any less or more than For Britain are. And I cannot really see that much distinction between the two organisations. But clearly, in her mind, or in terms of what answer she gave, she does seem to think they're hugely, hugely different. But I'm a member of UKIP. I went to their conference last year. From what I can see, I don't think they are that different in what they stand for. Under Gerard Batten, now, I wouldn't have necessarily said the same under Nigel Farage, but under Gerard Batten, and obviously, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, but that's because she has a personal issue with the way she was treated. So you can tell from when she spoke that I think she was coming from a place of emotion rather than logic. Obviously, UKIP is not just a one-trick party. And also on top of that, they do have much more political clout than she has. And so I do agree. I even asked Gerard Batten about the party splitting their votes. Obviously, he got distracted by a pretty lady and then walked off and ignored me, which is why I can't trust him with the nuclear keys, obviously.
I think we should try and get Gerard Batten on, Raj, in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do with this live stream? Are you going to keep it running?
No, I think we should terminate this and we start off a new one. Then at least we can relax a bit and get more to the standard Friday mayhem literature.
I was firing. I apologize if I fired shots at online. I know I went a bit savage then. I called him a gutter dwelling tramp. But we do welcome gutter dwelling tramps like him anyway. So
I have invited both him and Tan to come on and answer a few questions, but they said they couldn't over the Christmas period. So maybe in January they both like to come on.
All right, so I think I don't want to take control again, but I think maybe cut the stream and start a new one.
Yeah,
yeah, we are cool online, right? We are cool. So I'm just firing shots. The thing is, start a new one.
Leave it for the other show, Raj. But Steve, will you be joining the second after show?
I'll join it. I don't know how long I'll stay, but yeah, I'll join you.
Okay, all right, guys. Let's end
so
this.
We're doing a new stream. Maybe you should start now. Oh yeah, we'll do a new stream straight away. So jump on then. Hit the like button, please.
Okay, guys. See you on the new stream. Thank you to all the moderators. Thank you for all the listeners, and thank you for Anne Marie Waters for joining us. So we'll start the next the new stream straight away. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.